What if, like all our attempts to like heal the planet with all this like, cutting edge science accidentally like pushed it closer to the brink? That's the question posed by Proboscis Prognosis.
Right.
This simulated world that we're diving into today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Looking at what might happen if we reintroduced woolly mammoths to the Arctic.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, it sounds like a win-win.
Right.
For conservation and climate change.
Totally, bring back this iconic species, let them roam the tundra.
Yeah.
Like they used to maybe even help restore a damaged ecosystem.
Exactly.
But Proboscis Prognosis suggests a much different outcome, doesn't it?
It does this simulation using an AI called Johnson 6441.
Okay.
Projects that bringing back mammoths might actually accelerate the very problem we're trying to solve. Permafrost thaw.
Okay, so before we get into why that is,
Sure.
let's break down like what permafrost even is.
Okay.
Because I think some people might just hear frost and think, well, what's the big deal? Is it thaws?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Permafrost is that's been frozen solid for at least 2 years.
Okay.
Sometimes much, much longer.
Got it.
It's like a giant freezer storing tons of organic matter.
Oh.
And when it thaws, that organic matter decomposes, releasing methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere.
So more methane means a warmer planet, which means even more permafrost thawing.
Yeah.
It's this vicious cycle.
It is.
But where do the mammoths fit into all of this?
Right.
They're big furry herbivores.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be good for the environment?
That's what we might assume.
Right.
But the simulation found that while mammoths might help restore some plant life, their impact on the snowpack is where things go awry.
Okay.
They compact the snow with their weight and movements, making it a less effective insulator.
So instead of the snow trapping heat and keeping the ground frozen.
Exactly. It allows the cold air to reach deeper into the permafrost.
Oh, wow.
Actually speeding up the thawing process.
Oh, so it has like the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's how, according to the simulation, these mammoths could end up unintentionally worsening the climate crisis.
No, this AI Johnson 6441.
Yeah.
How do they even create this simulation?
Right.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. They've combined a ton of research, everything from scientific papers to digital models to robotics principles.
Wow.
This allows them to project how these genetically modified mammoths and their behaviors.
Genetically modified mammoths.
Right.
So we're not talking about just cloning them.
Right. This is about exploring a future where our genetic engineering abilities have advanced significantly.
Okay.
We might be tweaking these mammoths to be even better suited to the Arctic environment. But even those good intentions could backfire.
And it's not just the science that's fascinating here.
Right.
The project description paints this vivid picture of the Arctic and this potential future.
Yeah.
Sparse settlement survivors struggling to adapt, even whispers of ghost herds from previous failed attempts to bring back mammoths.
It's this blend of cutting-edge technology and the haunting awareness of past mistakes that makes this so compelling.
Right.
Johnson 6441 is really pushing us to think about the consequences of our choices, both intended and unintended.
So what does all this mean for us, the listeners?
Yeah.
Why should we care about a simulation of woolly mammoths in some potential future?
It's a powerful reminder that even our best efforts to solve problems can have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Especially when we're dealing with complex systems like our planet.
It's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Exactly.
We might think we're doing the right thing, but...
Exactly. And Proboscis Prognosis takes that idea and applies it to a very real and very urgent issue. Climate change.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's also incredibly thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to unpack here.
Sure.
So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah.
Because we're just getting started.
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions, right?
Totally.
We tend to think of technology as the solution to all our problems, but Proboscis Prognosis suggests it could just as easily become part of the problem.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this project so important.
Yeah.
It's not about fear-mongering, but about encouraging us to think critically about the tools we're developing and the potential consequences.
Right.
Both good and bad.
Precisely, as Johnson 6441 isn't saying we should never pursue de-extinction.
Right.
Or genetic engineering. They're saying, let's pause, let's model, let's try to understand the complexities before we charge ahead.
It's like that old saying, measure twice, cut once.
Right.
But on a planetary scale.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real value of this simulation lies.
Yeah.
It's not about predicting the future with certainty, but about exploring possibilities and prompting us to ask tough questions.
So it's a warning, but also an invitation
Yeah.
to engage in a deeper conversation.
Right. And it's not just a conversation for scientists and policymakers.
Right.
This concerns all of us.
Because we all live on this planet.
Exactly.
And we're all going to be impacted by these decisions.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things Johnson 6441 is trying to achieve with this project, to make these complex scientific issues accessible and relevant to everyone.
To get people talking, to get people thinking about the future we're creating.
Yes, and to understand that the future isn't some predetermined path.
Right.
It's something we're actively shaping with the choices we make today.
And those choices often involve navigating a complex web of trade-offs and potential unintended consequences.
Which is why projects like Proboscis Prognosis are so crucial.
Yeah.
They provide a glimpse into what could be, for better or for worse, and empower us to make more informed decisions.
Because ultimately, we're not just talking about mammoths and permafrost here.
Right.
We're talking about the future of our planet and the role we want to play in shaking it.
And that brings us back to you, the listener.
Right.
What are your thoughts on all of this?
Does their simulation make you more cautious about technological solutions to environmental problems? Or does it spark your imagination about the possibilities of restoring lost ecosystems?
We'd love to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag Proboscis Prognosis.
Because these aren't just hypothetical questions anymore.
Right.
These are the real-world dilemmas we're facing right now.
Yeah.
And the choices we make today will determine the future we inherit tomorrow. It's definitely a lot to ponder.
Yeah.
And while this specific project focuses on mammoths in the Arctic, it really gets you thinking about the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
The same principles apply to any kind of large-scale intervention, whether it's geoengineering de-extinction or even seemingly benign things like introducing a new species to a habitat.
Right. We tend to focus on the immediate goal, the problem we're trying to solve, but we don't always consider the full range of potential consequences, especially the ones that might unfold over decades or even centuries.
And that's where simulations like Proboscis Prognosis can be so valuable.
Yeah.
They act as a kind of early warning system, allowing us to explore those potential consequences in a virtual environment before we unleash them in the real world.
It's almost like a dress rehearsal for the future.
Exactly.
Giving us a chance to identify potential pitfalls and adjust our course before it's too late.
Exactly. And while no simulation can perfectly predict the future, these models can help us ask better questions, challenge our assumptions, and ultimately make more informed decisions.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Proboscis Prognosis, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I hope they come away with a sense of cautious optimism. The challenges we face, from climate change to biodiversity loss, are immense. But we also have incredible tools at our disposal, like advanced simulations and genetic engineering. The key is to use these tools wisely with a deep understanding of their potential impacts, both positive and negative.
It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers. And being humble enough to admit that even our best intentions can sometimes go awry.
And being willing to engage in those difficult conversations, to consider different perspectives, and to constantly question our assumptions.
Because shaping the future isn't about blindly charging ahead. It's about moving forward with both innovation and caution. With a deep respect for the complexity of the systems we're trying to change.
Well said. And ultimately, it's about recognizing that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create collectively through the choices we make every day.
Well, thank you for joining us on Exploring Futures.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope this deep dive has sparked some important conversations and encouraged you to think deeply about the choices we face, both individually and as a society.
And as always, we encourage you to share this episode with others. Keep the conversation going.
Yes, until next time, keep exploring.